Welcome to the Think Fitness Life podcast, your one-stop shop for exploring the connections between fitness, health, and overall well-being. Join us as we dive deep into all aspects of a balanced and vibrant life, from pushing your limits in the gym to finding peace of mind outside of it. Whether you're a seasoned athlete or just starting your journey, you are in the right place to discover the knowledge and insight to perfect your fitness life.
All right, we're back once again with the Think Fitness Life podcast, and today I am lucky to have Nick Klingensmith with me, who is a best-selling author, 4-time cancer survivor, type 1 diabetic and recovering alcoholic. He's done over 100 Spartan races, and his book, Through the Fire, exemplifies all the lessons he learned that has also led him to today becoming a motivational speaker and a mental endurance coach. So today he's going to tell us his story of Through the Fire and all the ups and downs along the way and the lessons he came out and learned. So take a listen. And here we go. Nick, take it away.
Matt, thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. Appreciate you. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for willing to share your story.
I am happy to. And let me tell you why. There was a marquee moment for me. And it happened on a Friday afternoon in October of 2016, when my boss walks into my office and he says, "Hey, I want to do a Spartan race and you're going to do it with me." And I looked at him and I said, "No, no, fuck no. God, 8 to 10 mile trail run with obstacles? No, that's awful. I have no intention of being that uncomfortable."
Mm-hmm.
And I had gone home that night and I'm lying on my couch and I thought about it. I already was that uncomfortable. At that point in my life, I had survived cancer 4 times. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I'm a recovering alcoholic. I have 7 herniated discs from 2 different rollover car accidents. I almost died from meningitis. And yet I was at a point in my life where, as we were just talking before the show, I had just hit like a pinnacle of success in business and really in life, where I had achieved a number of really big goals that I had set for myself almost 10 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
I had just been promoted at work. I was dating a new girl, an amazing girl, is my now wife. And I had just decisively beaten cancer for the 4th time.
Yeah.
I had everything going for me and I already was that uncomfortable and I needed a catalyst. I needed a change. I didn't know what it was. And it literally walked into my office. And so I said, yes. The race was 9 weeks later. And what I thought was just going to be a one and done race turned into 7 years, 101 Spartan races, 6 major marathons, including Boston, Chicago, New York, and Berlin.
Wow.
50 or 60 other endurance events, the book written, and lives getting motivated and inspired.
Galvanizing the public, right? That's what we're trying to do here. Help people make change. So how old were you when when your boss walked in your door?
44 now, 7. I'm going to say I was 36 or 37.
Okay. And when, but you explained how this kind of turning point actually happened after you defeated and overcome some of these tragic events here. Talk to me a little bit about the process of overcoming those, the cancer, the diabetes, the alcoholism, and how something was still left unfulfilled, or maybe the ways that you were getting through those things didn't make you, like you were still feeling fearful and not comfortable.
Well, it's funny that you say that, because skipping ahead a little bit, when I wrote my book, Through the Fire, the first version was 125,000 word, mindless ego manifesto. It might as well have been like a movie poster with Jake Gyllenhaal playing me. The second year, I spent revising and editing the book and cutting out all the bullshit and all the lies and all the ego, and just got naked and vulnerable and honest with myself. And I really started seeing everything in a different perspective. I mean, everything. And I just started getting more and more vulnerable and more willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And it was throughout that process that I realized there was a time about 7 months after I had started obstacle course racing. And during those 7 months, I was just getting, one, good habits are a gateway drug. I just started doing better physical health. I wanted to learn how to do things better. So I was just tapping into the mental parts of my brain. I started to do yoga and meditation. So I was just getting more spiritual. I was becoming a better person. People were responding to me differently. I liked who I was. I liked the progress. I just liked how I felt.
Yeah.
And that's when I got hit by that second car. The second car accident that I talked about earlier.
And the
happened
herniated disc, right?
exactly one day after my third anniversary of sobriety, 7 months after I started obstacle course racing. I got more herniated discs. I got nerve damage. My Jeep was all jacked up. I went home that night and my cat of 12 years died.
Well, geez.
10 days later, the lady who hit me died. And although all I was doing was sitting at a red light, the last thing that happened to her was an interaction with me. And that was very hard to it still is.
Yeah.
It still is. And so I was lying on the couch and I was injured and I was sad as fuck. And there were changes going on at work I didn't like. There was just different changes around me. And I just felt like everything that I had just been built up, all that momentum, all that fire that I had just created, I felt like none of it was real. I felt like the ground beneath me was disappearing. I felt despair. I wanted to give up. I wanted to quit. The only thing is I didn't know what that meant. So, I mean, how many times have we said, man, I just want to give up. But yet, you get up
What
and go
would
to
that
work
actually
the next day.
mean? Right.
I get up and I brush my teeth. I get up and I take a shower. I still walk the dogs. I still eat food. You just don't know what to do. So I kept moving forward. And about a month after that, I still didn't have a diagnosis on the nerve damage in my arm and shoulder. And I was like, screw it. I'm going to put a race on the calendar. And I signed up for a race. I was about a month later. I was going to have to modify because I was still pretty injured.
Right.
And throughout that, I'm starting to train, but my heart wasn't in it. And I'm standing outside of my patio. It was kind of like Rocky 3, where he's training, Apollo's yelling at him. He's just not really there. Anyways, and I was stuck and I was lost. And I was listening to a motivational video, one of those ones that are you going to be a victim or a survivor? And I was thinking to myself that I didn't like the choices. And here's the revelation that I had. I hadn't overcome any of my adversity. I had only survived it. I hadn't overcome cancer, diabetes, addiction. I hadn't overcome any of these things. I had just survived them. I had still been a victim in a victim mindset up until that point. I still felt like it was me against the world. And you can't feel like it's you against the world unless you feel like you're being victimized by the world. And that's how I felt. And I decided I was tired of being a victim. I was tired of being a survivor. I am not here to survive. I am not here to be victimized. I'm here to thrive and I'm going to be a warrior. It was a life-changing mindset.
I love that. I'm shocked that where you start your story is years after the cancer and alcoholism and diabetes. It fascinates me. Also, you say that you wrote that book. It almost is like looking back, you were not happy with the way that you wrote that book because, like you said, you wrote it because, and you overcame. You just survived. You didn't really thrive, and you might have wrote that book more in an egotistical light. You mentioned, and it's interesting how you had to have this other come to Jesus moment to recognize, looking back, that you still weren't thriving, right? I mean, it's such a subtle difference, but it's a big difference. And it's fascinating how, you have to live life forward, but you can only understand it looking back. And we can only kind of learn that we were doing things in a wrong way looking back, but the only way to correct it is just to go forward. And the line comes to mind that it's just in essence, the way that just our paradigm shift and awaken us to what's capable, again, not just surviving, but thriving. So when you look back at the way you were living, what made you recognize that you had just survived those things and you were just holding on to things and you weren't really like living your best life, if that makes sense.
I can't think of another word for it other than to call it a glorified temper tantrum.
That's what you think you were having looking back at yourself.
Absolutely. And that's where a lot of my changes have come from, is just a frustration with the situation. And,
Yeah.
if you look at, I'm really lucky when it comes to being an alcoholic in recovery, because I didn't spend a lot of time out there. I mean, it was 10 years ago that I got sober. So I was 34 years old, 35 maybe. And, I wasn't an all the time drinker. I didn't get drunk every time I drank, and bad things didn't happen every time I got drunk. It's a progressive disease, and it certainly was progressing very fast. And my decisions and my behaviors were not that easy for me to hide from for too long,
Yeah.
where, and it became all but public. And I didn't like it. I did not like who I was. I didn't like the fact that I literally had no more control over my life. Like, I went from having a superpower with alcohol, where I was a extraordinarily functional alcoholic, and to all of a sudden I'm just doing stupid things. I'm blacking out more. And I mean, it was happening faster. And I
Sure.
really just hated who I was. So
Mm.
I attempted to white knuckle it for a few months on my own, and
Yeah.
that wasn't enough. It took an all but catastrophic event for me to get
The
that
car
wake up.
accident. The car accident was the wake up call.
No, the wake up call was getting thrown out of a Las Vegas hotel for trying to fuck a hooker in a closet while my girlfriend was sleeping in the bedroom down the hall.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah, that one's kinda hard to hide from or make excuses for.
So
And
this is before the first Spartan race, before the
Yep,
boss came in the door. Okay.
yep,
Yeah.
yep. This is 2 years before any of that. And the funny thing is, I thought I was still living a good life. I'd go into the gym, I was good at work, I had good relationships. It's just, again, it's a progressive illness. And when I finally when my bed hit the pillow that night, next morning, I said out loud, "I don't wanna live this way anymore." And it had really been only a year or 2 where I was a slave to the disease, and I just know there are people who spend decades out there, and so I'm very fortunate. But I didn't like the way I was living, and I was lucky and fortunate enough to be able to make a change. And so when I found myself, just again 2 years later, in a situation where I was I was frustrated, I felt stuck, I didn't know what to do. I knew I wanted to be more active. I knew I wanted to live my life more. I knew I wanted to be more in the mainstream of life and find some sort of fulfillment, and I didn't know what it was. So that's what happened on the patio that day in 2017 too. Is I didn't like who I was. I was being a victim. I was being the sulky little kid, and I was presented with an opportunity to do something about it. And so I made a choice, and I
Yeah.
needed something that I couldn't make an excuse for, that I couldn't possibly justify my behavior.
Yeah.
And I hated myself for it, not just
So
for
you had to
that.
face yourself. So you had to face the inner demons head on.
Yeah. I mean, there
Yeah.
was no way to just be like, "Oh, I'm just doing this because," or "I'm doing that because," or, I wore so much of my life and so many of the things that had happened at that point. Because I mean, that was 2014, so I had already had cancer 3 times, diabetes, sleep apnea, just all the things that had continued to happen. And for a while, I had used that victim mindset like armor, and I think it did help me stay tough for a while. But after
Yeah.
a bit, it becomes a prison cell, and a
Right.
poisonous one at that.
It's like a tool that served you for a period of time, but then a certain time it was no longer serving you and it had to get rid of, had to get rid of it. But at the same time, you list all these things that had happened to you, and it's like, well, of course, anybody would go through that. Anybody, or excuse me, anybody would have like a temper tantrum, so to speak, for years, because of that. And people have had less things happen to them and they still use it as an excuse to be a victim to everything that happens to them in their life. So it's like, it's understood, I feel, to look back and say, oh, I had an adult temper tantrum. But yeah, I just think, to your point, like the deciding factor of you breaking out of that cycle was you facing the news, so to speak.
There's a book I read a long time ago. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. And the opening of the book is like an analogy of a baby trying to crawl forward, and it gets to a couch or a wall or something and starts freaking out and crying because it can't go forward anymore and it doesn't know how to go backwards.
Mm, mm,
Well, I when I would have this temper tantrum of defiance is really what I would say for myself is I'd hit that wall and I just get tired of being there. And I'm like, you know what? I don't have to be there. I don't have to go through this wall. I can go this way. I can do something else. I
I
can
can
make,
back up.
I can make a change. And
Yeah.
here's the thing that I've learned. And this is the thing that anybody listening who hasn't already come to this conclusion on their own is not going to like, but it is a choice. How you live your life, how you perceive your life, how you perceive the events in your life, what you do with those events in your life, all of it, 100% of it comes down to a decision. And it really is that simple. I'm not saying it's a simple decision to make. I'm not saying it's easy to keep the negative forces away, but there's nobody else who's going to make that decision for us. And if we're just enjoying life or happy in life because when good things happen to us, then I mean, those ups and then you're going to be just as terribly upset when the bad things happen. And yeah, you know what? I think that some of the things that make my story relatable because I have the buzzwords, right? Cancer, addiction, diabetes, loss, blah, blah, blah. But everybody goes through shit. We all
Mhm.
have our own frame of reference. And if you haven't gone through what I went through, then the things that you're going through are just as bad for you as the things that I've gone through.
Right, right. Yeah, and like I guess some of the pain can be stronger, like emotionally and spiritually, when it's like a tough pill to swallow of I'm my own worst enemy, or I'm choosing to stay in this cycle. And it's almost like a bittersweet victory, right? It's like you have to come to this realization by accepting the responsibility, which can be freeing because you notice that I can get myself out of the situation. But then there probably comes a period of shame and guilt and more fear, right? You opening yourself up to that vulnerability. Talk to me about kind of opening up to that vulnerability and that tough pill to swallow.
Well, here's the thing about vulnerability is, I mean, a year ago, I would have never admitted I was afraid of something,
Mm,
even a year ago. That's why, I mean, once you let the genie out of the bottle with this shit, it is just, it's amazing. You just keep learning and you just keep seeing things. And like I mentioned earlier before the show, I mean, I'm as wide eyed right now as a kid about to graduate college, here I'm turning 45, like, and I'm just
yeah,
seeing the opportunity and awesomeness and the potential that lays ahead of me,
yeah. And
So
it's like the best lies ahead because of the choices you make today. It's like you can constantly believe that, like, or know that, like, the best is yet to come because of the path you're on.
and I do know.
Yeah,
I know it.
yeah,
And here's part of why I can know it too, is because I'm willing to endure what I have to get there.
right, right.
Most people aren't. A year
Well,
ago, I wasn't. I was
yeah,
stuck in a job that I thought literally stuck because financially I needed it. I wanted to become a motivational speaker. I wanted to become a mental endurance coach, but I was too afraid to break free from my financial constraints. And I was talking to a friend of mine about what the vision is, right? He
mhm,
even called me out on it. And I knew this already. And he was like, but you're not willing to sacrifice, my car, my house, things like that to get there. And I wasn't, right? Well, when I left my job 5 months ago, I am so certain of my overwhelming success in helping people and in this business that if I have to lose everything I own
it's
to
worth the
get
risk.
there, it's the cost of doing business.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah,
I don't need to be afraid anymore because I am that certain that I'll get there.
yeah.
And I'll tell you what, at the end of the day, right? Because I know how Nick would have responded to that comment 2 years ago, or not even 2 years ago, we'll say 5 years ago. I would have said how bullshit that was. And wow, what a flighty response. Like he's out in the clouds, like whatever. So here's what I would challenge anyone with that kind of sentiment, right?
Mhm,
Who cares if I'm wrong?
mm,
I'm happy. I'm
yeah,
purpose driven. I'm, do I not worry about money? Of course I do. I have bills to pay and running out of money to pay it. But again, I'm purpose driven. I'm so certain of my purpose. I'm not out here like thinking I'm going to, get odd jobs to pay for my life. I'm not just full of side
Right.
hustles. Like, I'm on a mission.
Yeah.
And if I'm
And
wrong and ultimately I get into catastrophic failure, well, then I've overcome every other bad thing that's ever happened. So I'll overcome that one too.
the words that come to mind of, if you're not willing to make sacrifices for the things that you're passionate about, then you're willing to sacrifice the things that you're passionate about. And, it speaks volumes already what you've done and the impact you've made, but you can just hear it in your voice and your conviction. And I think that stands true. That's louder than any good marketing scheme with good copywriting and good, trigger points and psychology to get people to make purchases and things like that. And you're fighting the good fight. And I think there's definitely a lot of admiration that comes with that. And you hold your nobility to yourself, and you hold your head high.
Things that drive, if I can say that,
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a lot of survivor's guilt from cancer.
Really?
Like, I used to get treated at Moffitt Cancer Center, which is definitely one of the best cancer hospitals in the country.
And you didn't think you deserved it?
What's that?
You didn't think you deserved to survive?
I used to wear my sunglasses in there because I didn't want to make eye contact with anyone. And here's why. It was really hard for me because I had thyroid cancer, which, if you catch it early, has a good prognosis. And my life was never really in danger because we caught it early. And every time I go in there, I'm walking out, and I can't say that for everybody else.
Yeah.
And so that was hard for me. Like, I didn't even like talking about cancer because I feel like I'm at the kiddies table. I've been on a group podcast before with somebody who had like Lance Armstrong's cancer, like 7 types of cancer. I'm over here like, I have to take a pill. I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
But I had to accept that it's not a comparison. It's cancer, and I had it.
Well, and then
But
just like you said earlier, sorry, but just
No,
like
go
you
ahead.
said earlier about individual problems, like,
Yeah, I know.
you know what I mean? It's all relative, right? I mean, someone can stub their toe and think they have the worst day in the world, and then hear your story and feel like inspired, like, oh my gosh, if he can overcome that and things thrown at him, I can overcome this stupid little stub toe, So yeah, it's all relative.
But here's where it helps me is I've finally come to the conclusion I don't need to feel bad for being alive. And I have something that I can now use to help others with it. I am alive. I let's not waste that. Another thing is that through my program of recovery is I've just really understood firsthand 2 things. Number 1, the power of helping other people. Just a mentality of help first. I would speak for free if I didn't need money. I would write the books I'm going to write for free. I would be on every I just want to help. I do. And it's a self-renewing energy for me.
Yeah.
Like,
It recharges you.
Yeah, it's not, this is not, I'm not a, what's the word? I'm not a philanthropist, all right? Like, this is, I am selfish too. It helps me to help other people.
Yeah.
Like, my life is better. I am happier. I feel better. It gives me purpose, and I help people. So yay. The other part though is one day at a time living. I've been practicing for 10 years how to stay in the day.
Just to enjoy the present. Yeah.
Just to focus on the present too. It's, the good, bad, or otherwise. If I'm in a situation, one of the things that got me drunk was ignoring the situations.
Right. And escape.
And you can't overcome stuff that you aren't willing to face. And once you've done it though, the thing is, once you've taken steps, every time you step into fear, there's less to fear. Every time you step into the uncomfortable, less becomes uncomfortable. You redefine the space that you live in every time you're willing to make those changes.
And you keep expanding that comfort.
Looking for personalized workout plans? Whether you prefer to train at home or hit the gym, try a 14-day free trial of the Think Fitness Life mobile app. Get customized workouts, nutrition guidance, and coaching from a qualified professional who will be in your corner every step of the way. Visit www.thinkfitnesslife.com to start your free trial today. That's www.thinkfitnesslife.com.
So,
Exactly.
So on the lines of helping people, your story definitely highlights a lot of key aspects. I'm curious at how you first started making changes, when you first kind of looked yourself in the mirror and realized you didn't like what who you were and you were ready to make changes, where did you begin?
I mean, it really did. There was the two major changes. One was getting sober, which it was Vegas was the nail in the coffin for me. I immediately went home and that was it. I mean, it'll be 10 years, God willing, in July.
Good for you. Congratulations.
Thank you. The real defining moment was it started by saying yes to that race. And on Monday morning, I had to do the most uncomfortable thing I had ever done in my life, which is I set the alarm for 5 a.m. to wake up before work. That was unheard of for me. I was there. I woke up 2 minutes before I needed to be anywhere. So by doing so, though, just by making that one little change, okay, and I'm not like saying I was running 5 hours a day back then. I was probably running 2 or 3 miles and getting in the shower, walking my dog, whatever. But by doing that, I decided to be intentional about when I went to bed.
Mm,
And so for the first time
interesting.
in my entire life, I gave my body a regular sleep cycle,
The rest it was looking for all along.
or at least just a consistency, because I never
Right.
really sleep a lot. Like I'm a 6 to 7 hours at most. But then all of a sudden, as I wanted to do more of these races, I realized I needed to take care of my body and learn how to recover. So I started to stretch. I wanted to get more mentally tough. So I started to meditate.
Yeah.
You know,
It just kind of came like
it's
that.
one little thing went in front of another, you know?
Yeah.
I went from cutting out foods so I could drop weight to making sure I'm getting enough food. And then this one was key. I went to Cuba for a couple days. Don't know if you'd ever been. Highly recommend it if you get the
Haven't.
chance. But this was in 2017 before Trump redid restrictions and whatever. So it was a little
Right.
bit easier to go. There was supposed to be a Spartan race there. They canceled the race, but my wife and another couple, we went anyways. And for 4 days, all the good Cuban food is in Miami. They don't have the spices and the sauces. This is like literally farm to like, this is backyard to table. All right. It was about as organic as it gets. There is no frills.
I love this.
They barely had beef because the cows need to make milk and nobody's importing the shit. So we ate great. But when I went home, I was like, I can't wait to get a greasy pizza. Dude, I was sick for a week. I'm exaggerating.
Yeah.
No, awful. And so I realized like, hey, organic isn't one of those like, marketing schemes.
Fluffy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So I don't have a strict diet of any kind, but if I have the option of buying organic or not, I buy organic. I definitely avoid eating a whole bunch of processed stuff that's going to make me feel like crap, and
Yeah.
none of these decisions were hard because it was one little thing that I wanted to make me better.
Yeah.
And none of them required me giving anything up. I didn't sacrifice. I still eat pizza, just infrequently and whatever. Like I haven't sacrificed anything for the life that I'm living. I have chosen things that serve me better.
Yeah. And like the demand came at the right time, right? It was like, okay, you said yes to that Spartan race. So the demand of like, being sober and staying consistent with sleep had to come, and setting that schedule of running had to come. And then nutrition for better performance had to come. So it just sounds like it still took that momentumous mindset shift of like, I want to change and I'm going to tackle and address things. I'm not going to say no to them. You didn't say, oh, Spartan race. Nah, I think I'll change a different way. I think I'll just kind of go for a walk, read a book. And
I think I just needed something intentional, like I spent the first 2 years of my sobriety hacking away the bad habits, and I was ready to add something new to my life.
Yeah. Were there any other key elements to your success that we haven't really touched on?
Man, I will tell you this. My only talent is I just do not know how to quit.
Yeah.
And
Resiliency.
I want to say that most people can be that way. A lot of people don't think they are, but maybe because they haven't had the practice that I have had. There are a number of different stories I like to tell where just how you need to keep moving forward. And now that is a big part of my story. I would have been dead a number of times over, and I think it's important what I said earlier applies to so many people, and I don't think they realize it, but here's how I know I will overcome the next bad thing. Because I've overcome every other bad thing. I have a 100% success rate, and so does everybody else.
Yeah.
Like you survived 100% of the bad days, and it's
That
important.
had up until now.
Remember that.
Yeah.
Like, I've been through tough times, but it's just a phase. The reason I know this too is because I had some awesome times and they've fallen out. But, I think that's the most critical thing where I'm at now. Oh, get this sidebar. When I was in the first grade, we were doing like a creative writing assignment or something. And I remember I went to go hand my teacher mine and she gives me a bad grade. And I was like, what? And I don't know. I censored myself that time, but
Yeah,
she,
man. It's all right. It's explicit podcast.
she said, because you can't start a sentence with the word and I said, I didn't. And I walked back to my desk and I got the sheet from the day before. She didn't realize I was continuing. As a first grader, apparently I was the only one in the class who was doing that. Like I was on page 6 of a book.
Yeah.
So I wanted
You
to
were
write.
writing your book back then.
I was. When I was in the 4th grade, everybody had to write a little book. When I read mine out, I got a standing ovation. I wanted to write a book since I was literally like 6 years old.
Yeah.
I've written a couple fiction novels. I actually sent one to like pretty much every agent that ever was. It went nowhere.
And this is separate from Through the Fire?
This is the stuff
before?
I wanted to do. And then I never really put the work into another book. And as one time I was complaining to my old boss about how diabetes was such a bitch and I was dealing with all this. And he was like, well, I'm sorry. And I go, well, I'm not. That's why I got to write a book. I just needed the right
That's
subject.
great.
And I mean, I'll be done with my next one hopefully by the end of next month.
Do you think that there's something to do with intention in there? Do you think that, previously, you'd mentioned kind of looking back and feeling like you maybe a little more egotistical and temperamental. And I think, I'm in my 30s, looking back on my 20s, I feel the exact same way about myself. I feel like in my teens and 20s, I was just like so cocksure of myself and so full of myself. And my late 20s and 30s have humbled me to looking back and realizing like, I think I almost know less now than I did back then, but I'm humbled by it. I'm okay with it, So do you think a little bit of his intention shifting, right? It's like we originally wrote to try to build our ego and to get famous and fortune. And now it's like doing it just for the sole purpose of doing it. Do you think that changes the impact it has and the way it's received?
Whether or not I get to write fiction or not, we'll see one day because I have great stories in my head. But I will tell you that I wrote Through the Fire a couple different ways at first. And the only way it was going to work is if I was 100% vulnerable, naked, raw, and honest. So, because nobody was going to, and here's the thing is like, nobody's going to care about this if I don't tell them who I was and how I got there. Like, that's why I talk about Vegas.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to care about who I am.
Unless you're willing to go to that depth of a level for somebody to relate to who's unwilling to talk about their vulnerability that they experience.
And that's why I talk about the times where I realize now that I've been afraid. I thought I wasn't afraid of anything because I had been through a lot of shit and I thought it made me tough. It was a tough exterior, but at the same time, I had no idea that I was afraid of cancer, that yes, I'm afraid when I'll get it again. I'm always afraid that diabetes is going to betray me. Like I'm not the least bit afraid that I will get drunk again, but there's still some fears in there somewhere. Like, there's just fear. I am, even though I said like, yes, I'm willing to go and endure and like what I'll have to, I don't want to lose my home. Of course, I'm afraid of, financial ruin, even though, like I said, I'm prepared to go through it to get to the other side. Right. I don't want to. For sure. Like it's going to stop. Sure. Yeah. It's just, I can't let that fear stop me from doing the things that I want to do. I use an example in obstacle course racing. So I am deathly afraid of snakes. There is no
Indiana Jones.
Yeah. No bigger, why'd it have to be snakes? No bigger sissy on the planet than me when it comes to snakes. Yet I routinely run through swamps in Florida.
To overcome that fear.
Hell no, I do it because the race takes me through the course. Oh God. I see a snake. I'm avoiding the snake, but it's still there. So I'm not overcoming my fear, but I am moving beyond it. I am not allowing it to prevent me from living the life that I want to live.
You're not allowing it to paralyze you.
It's still there. I'm scared to death if I see that snake. I will flip the fuck out and scream like a little girl.
So what are some major life lessons you'd like for people to take away from your story?
I talk about this one. I mentioned it a couple different ways already, but as a matter of fact, I think I just posted a video on YouTube about it today, but aligning your purpose, what you're doing with why you're doing it. Your why is your everything. It doesn't matter what you're doing. What matters is why you're doing it. And that is the most fundamental thing that I have learned throughout my entire journey. And yeah, I am talking about higher life purpose because
Yeah.
I've discovered mine, and mine is to overcome every obstacle and inspire others that they can too. And I've accepted that, which means that as life comes on, I handle it because I'm expecting it. And it also guides my decisions on how I'm serving other people and how I'm living my life. You can get through so much if you're able to align your purpose. I suffered through a job that I didn't like for 2 years because I knew it was a vehicle to help get me there. It was aligned what I was doing with why I was doing it.
Yeah. Talk to me about, because I think some people get to a point where they hear someone at your level and just are like almost discouraged because they're like, oh, they're so lucky. They have it all figured out already. They've solved everything. So talk to me about some stuff that you still struggle with and that are still in process of being better aligned.
First of all, that's a brindle dog behind you.
Yeah. Brindle.
Yeah, boy.
Pitbull and German Shepherd mix.
Oh my God, that's why it looks like Cooper. My dog was a hound pit and he was brindle and we lost him
Okay.
2.5 years ago.
So he had probably the big head, right?
No,
big
it was,
pitbull
he had
head?
more of the hound head.
Okay.
But there's one, I struggle with loss a lot still. I mean, there's a lot of like guilt feelings inside of me and sadness and things that will creep up on me from time to time. And it can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
I don't honestly, I always say not to compare, but I always feel like when that sadness overwhelms me, I feel like I'm isolated from other people.
Yeah.
And but I know that I'm not the only person who gets these melancholy feelings or feelings of questioning our self-worth or our value, or especially because nobody's got a perfect record if you look at our
For
past.
sure. For sure.
So
And we all share, I love this quote of like, we all share a cup called loneliness together. But it is so funny how like, it's like a spiral staircase. It's like, once you start to go down it, it's like everything looks at through this filter of the glass is half empty and everything's terrible. And I must be the only one going through all this right now. And it can be daunting. So it's something you were saying that you're still working through.
now
But,
that said, right, I do have some tools. Number one, again, in recovery, I've accepted this is that my disease is progressive. Just because I haven't drank in 10 years, it's still there. And my disease wants to kill me.
yeah.
My disease is telling me that I'm a piece of shit, that I have no self-worth. I might as well get drunk and die. So I know that a lot of those feelings aren't real. I know it's my sickness.
Right.
And it's kind of like in A Beautiful Mind where, he realized some triggers and he can tell when he's basically hallucinating or whatever. Anyways.
No, I hear exactly what you're saying. I was just actually looking for a quote that really applied. Yeah, this quote like really emanates what you're talking about there. Is like, it's by this philosopher, Jean de la Bourrée. Life is a tragedy for those who feel and a comedy for those who think. So it's like when you're in those feels, yeah, it sucks and things feel daunting and your feels are trying to get you to drink more alcohol because you're a piece of garbage, right? And all these lies that have been cyclically told to us, that we have to like stop and turn that channel off and go to the thinking process. And that's really what I embody here with the name Think Fitness Life. Is like, we have this higher ability to think, to actually change the way we think, which is unique to humans. So when we can kind of like process and transform that energy, that angst, those negative feelings, it becomes compost, this beautiful garden that we're growing.
And I've got one because I was going to say, right, if there were levels to this thing, and I would say that there are, feelings are down here. Let's apply some thinking and logic here.
Yeah.
But you can still think yourself into a straitjacket. Beyond that is we have to take action.
Yes.
Act.
Yes.
And you can act your way out of sadness. I'm not saying you're going to stop being sad or feel better about that thing overall, but those paralyzing moments of sadness, get the fuck up and go do something. And I mean that, like, because those feelings can't stay. Those feelings are dragging you down. It's not the other way around.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that they won't come back or that you're not still feeling what you're feeling, but you can move beyond it. And I have found the same way when I find, and I can think myself in where I can't get out of a wet paper bag.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Especially
we absolutely
sometimes.
can overthink for sure.
Yeah. And it's usually the simplest thing that I get hung up on. Like I spent 2.5 days like writing an agreement that should have taken me 20 minutes. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but not by much. And that's where sometimes action is. I heard somebody say that speed is her currency. And I was like, man, I love that quote.
Mm.
And whenever I get jammed up, I'm like, it got good enough. Move on.
Right. Right. Right.
Like I have
Well,
to
that's probably the perfectionist in you that just wants to make sure you do it right.
yeah, I mean, you just know when something feels right or not, and if it's your
Yeah.
weak point, it's especially when you're starting a new business or a new venture, it's so hard because you don't want to, you want to learn from other people and see what they're doing, but you have to be okay working the step you're on.
Mm-hmm.
So I can model myself after people who like, you know, who are just out there doing their thing. But like I could model myself after like a Goggins or somebody like him, who's just a household name at this point. But if I do that, I'm gonna kill myself because people in my own household don't know who I am. So, like, you got to look at the step you're on. And it's funny. You
Right.
mentioned something about people might look at me and get discouraged. I actually use myself as a comparison against Goggins sometimes because I say that people will look at him and get discouraged and not take that first action. And
Right. Right.
whereas somebody might on the couch look at me and say, hey, I can do that too.
Mm.
That's why I post my obstacle failures. I post my slow run times. Like I don't want anyone out there to think that they can't do what I can do, that I do. There's
Yeah.
nothing unique about me that as far as I'm concerned.
I love that. I love that. You must have known what my next question was going to be because you just answered it. I just was going to say, words of advice for someone who is feeling like the weight of the world is on them. And you answered them already both with two perfect answers, which is take action and believe that it's possible. Don't believe that it's like this far reaching goal that is just only other people can do it and you're incapable of.
Let
So
me
I
give you one
love,
more that's critical.
please.
Prioritize to the now and focus on the now. And here's why, right? Like it's problem solving 101 is what's the most like critical problem we're facing?
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay,
Because
good.
most people are rearranging the deck furniture on the Titanic. They're wasting their time doing something when the ship is sinking.
Yes, 100%. And I'm guilty of it, right? So like
Yeah. Oh yeah.
right
Well, I mean,
now,
I do it too.
I started my business 5 months ago. Cash flow is less than, and so I'm looking at certain things as a homeowner, you know, homes fall apart like every day. And so I'm looking at
Yes.
things that I just want to like spend money on and fix and take care of and upgrade and blah, blah, blah. I'm looking at other speakers doing these really cool reels, and I'm looking at these associations, and I'm looking at these people who are doing this and doing that. And I'm like, oh my God. And then something else breaks. And what's the most important thing I can do right now to take me closer to my goals? And when you really think of it that way, I'm going to give you an example. My goal for the last like couple of years in Spartan racing has been the Killington Ultra. It's a 31-mile race in Killington, Vermont. It's got about 18,000 feet of climbing and like 70 obstacles. I've DNF'd it twice. It's got really strict cutoffs. It's the
What's
hardest race.
DNF?
Did not finish
Oh, so you've done it. Gotcha.
twice, and you got to make it these certain cutoffs. Only about 30% of the racers actually finish that race.
Wow.
And as a diabetic, that one means a lot to me because I want to show other diabetics that they can too.
That's
We don't need to
possible.
level playing field. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to still know it for myself too, like this is how I punch back against the shit that tries to hold me back. And since you like quotes, here's one I've been tripping on a lot lately. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. Walt Disney.
I like
love
it.
And I've been thinking about that a lot lately. So anyways, I could be telling you right now how I'm behind in my training. The race is 6 months away. I should be running 20-mile weekends already.
Yeah.
I've barely done any climbing. I've only been on my treadmill once. I've only done the stairs once, right? I should be doing that 3-4 times a week already. I could be panicking already. And so I got to start, oh my God, what do I need to do next? Well,
Just focus on today, right now.
the most
Right.
important thing that has to happen next is I need to run tomorrow morning. Okay. What needs to happen for that to happen? I need to get up with the alarm. That's it. Okay,
Yeah.
what needs to happen for that to happen? I need to be able to get a good night's rest. Okay, what needs to happen for that to happen? I need to be relaxed. Well, what do I need to do for that to happen?
Meditate, breathe.
It comes down to that. I just climbed a mountain with one breath. Everything could be blowing up around me, but if I've decided that that is the most important priority and I can break it down to that one thing and then just take the next step.
I love it. And make it so digestible for people, breaking it down like that and making it tangible, making their goals tangible. So I always like to ask everybody, what's their favorite lift in the gym?
I haven't been to a gym in
Or weight training exercise? Resistance training exercise?
anything with a sandbag.
All right. I like it. So you're like throwing it over your shoulder, picking it up, carrying it.
I do a lot of sandbag squats, sandbag
Okay.
lunges. I have a 40, a 60, and an 80-pound sandbag. I'll get on the
Right.
treadmill with the incline trainer. I take them to hills and go up and down. Remember, I train for mountains and I live in Florida, so
How to get creative.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. And then, we were talking about quotes and we said a bunch, but do you have a favorite quote that comes to mind maybe right now or just after today's episode?
Yeah, I'm going to take this one from my high school track coach. Never miss a chance to race against the clock.
What does that mean to you?
When I was a senior in high school, I had some stomach bug for like 4 days. I hadn't eaten anything. It was bad. I'll save you the details. And I was supposed to run the mile that day. And I had walked up to him just before he was about to address the team because I was going to tell him I can't run. I mean, I haven't eaten at all and bad issues. And right before I was like, "Hey coach, can I talk to you?" He's like, "Yep, 1 second though." And he gives his little, "Hey, here's this team. We're doing this. You guys are running that. You're running this." And then he's like, his little speech and he goes, "Never miss a chance to race against the clock." And then he's like, "All right, let's go." And then he's like, "Nick, do you need something?" I'm like, "No." And so I walked away and I laced up and it was awful, but never miss an opportunity to be your best, to do your best. Never miss an opportunity to just give what you have. Like I didn't need to race my best that day, but I needed to race to be my best.
Right. Right. I love it. Well, Nick, it's been a pleasure to have you on. Thanks for diving into your story, the ups and the downs. Where can people go to find more about you, find your book, or actually work with you? Any endurance athletes are looking for a mental endurance coach. Where can we find you?
I am available everywhere on social media at Stride Motivation. And if you go to my website, stridemotivation.com, you can book me for speaking engagements or book a call. And we can talk about some mental resilience coaching opportunities. And the book is available on Amazon.
Excellent. I'll be sure to include all those links in the show notes as well. And thank you so much, Nick Klingensmith, everybody.
If you're ready to make steps towards improving your health or increasing your performance, book a free 30-minute call today by visiting thinkfitnesslife.com.